break to watch. You make it all possible. Thank you. Now, to start with, 2 Americans are currently trapped in China, meaning they at least have each other. Tiffany, what's going on there?
I'm not sure they're in the same holding place, but yes, there are 2 separate cases of Americans being held back, or what's known as exit bans. So they go there of their own volition, and then when it's time to leave, they're like, oh, there's the gate, I can't leave. So one is a Wells Fargo executive, so that was already making a lot of headlines. But she was born in China, but has since become an American citizen, lives in Georgia, works out of Georgia. She was traveling to China for personal reasons, and then when she was leaving, suddenly not allowed to leave. So that was making the headlines, I'm sure people have seen. And then not long after that, there was a government employee, the first one ever. So this was someone who works in the Commerce Department's Patent and Trademark Office. So he was also there on a personal business. There's not that much information about him. Like, we don't know the name yet, but he was there. We know as much that he's there for personal business. He was also born in China, but since become an American citizen. And the reason for him for allegedly not being allowed to leave was that he didn't disclose he worked for the government on his visa when he was trying to enter the country. And there's also some other reporting that was saying for a stint he was in the U.S. Army, so China's also holding that against him. And for the first lady, the Wells Fargo one, China is alleging that she's involved in a criminal case. So these are the 2 latest ones, and they're huge in the headlines. But this isn't something new with China. China likes to use exit bans for diplomatic, but also other types of leverage, just being like, oh, we're going to hold it over you.
Like when they took those 2 Canadians hostage ahead of like their diplomatic deals, and then they killed them, I believe, in the end, didn't they?
There's a whole history here where the thing is, like, it's not that reported to the point where it's like people forget about that. So you had Christopher Balding, who was writing about this, where he was like huge in China. He used to study, I think, real estate back then. He's a big voice on China affairs. And he's like, people often ask me if I ever plan to go back to China, especially with my kids. And he was like, the answer is no. And they're like, even for vacation. He's like, no, what you have to understand is that China only allows you in if they want you to be there. And they see leaving as a privilege, basically. So they're like, haha, thanks for coming here. We get to decide if you leave or not. That's not the way the rest of the world works, right? So it's like, you just have to fundamentally understand this is a different rule book. And so in terms of these most recent cases, the State Department is also warning people, like, especially if you have some type of Chinese descent, China doesn't recognize dual nationality. So they'll harass you. Literally, the State Department website warns that, U.S. citizens of Chinese descent may be subject to additional scrutiny and harassment. So they're just like, be on your guard if you are there for personal reasons, like visiting family and friends.
So by exit ban, these people, are they actually detained somewhere, or are they just allowed to roam just within China?
Well, there's different cases. So I know of one example who was Stephen Shearer. He was a businessman. He was actually dual Swiss and American nationality. He had those 2 passports. A young man, right? He's like, I'm going to go to China, start a business. And then he had back then
Mistake number 1.
Friends who were being like, maybe you shouldn't. And he's like, no, I'll be fine. I have a Swiss passport. I have an American passport. Like, what could go wrong? So he goes there, he starts a business, gets a little too successful. Like, he's there for like 6 years. So like, this is a life, right? He has an apartment, he has a business, everything, blah, blah, blah. One day the Chinese police show up and they ask him really weird questions. They're like, how much are you making? He's like, huh? So he tells them, and then they're like, a bit more than like local Chinese ones in the same industry. And they took him straight to jail. And he was just like, huh? Like, to him, he's like, what? I'm in China, I'm starting a business, I'm helping the economy, like, blah, blah, blah. So he ends up in jail, but he does understand and speak Mandarin because he's part of he was working there. So he could understand what the guards were saying. And he thinks that's part of why he was released after 2 weeks. Also, obviously, the U.S. And Swiss passports, that helped as well. But his release was he was sent from jail to the airport and straight back home. Like, he wasn't able to go stop by his apartment and stuff. So all he had was the clothes he was wearing when he was arrested.
Oh, so he just bounced from the country. So he just left like his business, his apartment. He left everything.
Yeah, he wasn't allowed to go stop by there.
His money in the Chinese account?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
really?
That's the thing. So it's like you have different cases. There's also cases of like home arrest if you actually live there and stuff. So there's all sorts of different tragic cases.
But you don't know about these 2, Wells Fargo and the Commerce Department individual.
Well, what's really interesting with that, if it's financial related, there were warnings for people who work in finance going to China, because The CCP made new changes to its espionage laws where you can be charged as a spy if you even question the GDP numbers or if you try to audit a Chinese business. So if you do anything that damages the social order, meaning you question the CCP, if you talk about the true state of the economy, or if you have information that could damage or contradict the CCP's numbers, they can kill you, basically.
I mean, yeah, to your point, there was a 2022 academic study that found there's been 29 Americans and 44 Canadians that faced exit bans from 1995 to 2019 inside China, and a third of those were business related, where they're like, oh, we're going to keep you here.
The very opposite problem of the United States, where we're trying to get people out and they're not letting people leave.
Yeah, well, that's the opposite. Using the espionage, or the spy label, I mean, that's pretty common because it's so hard to disprove, especially in the public eye. Like Russia did that recently with several journalists, right? One from the Wall Street Journal. It just, I guess my question is like, okay, so the Wells Fargo executive, you said there's allegedly a criminal case against her. The Commerce Department guy either lied or checked the wrong box on a form. I mean, if I'm being charitable, that almost seems like legitimate reasons to hold them. So, but you're saying this is part of a larger kind of like, if you zoom out, this is part of a larger effort or like, not scheme, but like a pattern of the Chinese using this as leverage?
Well, yeah, so there's a foundation called Dahua that is a nonprofit that works to free political prisoners who are, held inside China. They estimate that there's over 200 Americans who've been detained wrongfully. So there are, rising cases of that. And the law that Josh was talking about, it expanded it to even things called national interests, so not just like national security. So for instance, if you're an outside country's company that makes more money inside China than a Chinese company, they can say that's hurting China's national interests. So it's like all these terms are so vague that no one really knows why you're being held, what the crime is, what anything is. It's the same as when you're inking deals with communist China. I had several experts talking to me, like the Belt and Road Initiative countries. They're like, no one knows what's in that agreement besides China. Like you sign a contract and then immediately afterwards, China or the Chinese companies start reneging on it, and you're like, hold up, we signed this in ink. They're like, yeah, well, I think you should. They think once you sign it, you start negotiating, not that that's the final word. So this is causing concerns in the business community because the business community for a long time has already been kind of like, is the risk inside China too great? But
Yeah.
you see these like kind of mixed messages. There are still some who see the China market as like the golden egg. They're like, oh, we just have to get 1 point whatever billion people. If we just get $1 from each one of them, we're gonna be rich. But then it's also kind of interesting that you're seeing these two recent cases because Beijing has been promoting foreign tourism. They're promoting, visa-free travel arrangements. They really want people to come in, especially for an investment. So then with these two recent moves, it's like, what is the message that Beijing is trying to send? Like, do you want people to visit, or are you going to create fear among the business community? And as you mentioned, there is the expected trade talks next week. We don't know if that's going to have a deal or a potential another delayed deadline for their deal, but markets are watching.
There was a recent leaked audio of President Trump on the campaign trail saying that he would blank Beijing. Bomb Beijing. Why would he bomb Beijing? What's the story there?
Well, so there's a lot of talks throughout the ages of what does peace through strength mean, right? So most people will say you have to be willing to fight a war and show that you have the military power and the whatever you want to call it, like personal might behind it to follow through.
The
right?
willingness, right?
Basically. So with previous administrations, a bunch of them, it's like, especially when it comes to Taiwan, and if there's a Chinese invasion on Taiwan, we have the strategic ambiguity. So no one really knows, and that's supposed to be a deterrent where you don't know if the whole power of the U.S. military might is going to be like, phew, if you try and do something. But throughout the years, you see China being like, I don't think you're actually going to follow through, and they've been building up their military. They now outnumber our ships, especially in the Navy. They have more, factories and places to build them, whereas the U.S. is like one left. And if we were to actually enter something, do we even have the production capacity to do something like that? So there's been a lot of, looks on the global stage, especially after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, where a lot of adversaries, but also allies are like, can the U.S. actually follow through militarily? So you have, someone like Trump come in and he's like, well, I need to make this very clear that we're not going to pull any punches if, something actually happens. But the whole goal in the end is still to be deterrence, to make sure that there is not a war.
Okay, so just to clarify for the people watching at home, the audio said that Trump, when talking to Xi Jinping, said that he would bomb Beijing if they were to invade Taiwan, and he said that Xi didn't believe him, but he said maybe 5% he believed him, and 5% is enough. I guess that's strategic ambiguity. I use strategic ambiguity in my home life. With my wife, it's very ambiguous. Like, do you have plans this weekend? I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. We kind of keep it ambiguous, and then whether you have plans or not, you can kind of choose the direction you go as you decide. And any thoughts on that strategy, Josh?
Well, that's it's the madman strategy. If you're playing poker, that is the strategy that works the best. So, for example, if you are playing against people who know everything they're doing, they're very good at it, they've studied every single strategy. There's the strategy called the madman, which means you do basically things in completely unpredictable ways and disregard all consequences. And that usually is the winning strategy, no matter how well your enemies plan for things.
All right, I'd have to go to the poker subreddit to see if that's the winning strategy. To says that
you're going to lose a lot of money.
Okay, last kind of...
You'll look cool doing it. That's what matters.
Okay, last thing I wanted to kind of bring up in this Asia segment. So there's been a lot of escalations by the CCP into Taiwanese airspace, right, as well as sort of the seas around, I guess, in the greater Pacific, right? They've been several incursions into Japan's exclusive economic zone. When the Taiwanese new president, when he announced that Taiwan is a country, there was an incursion into the median line, Taiwan's sort of air defense area, and there's new satellite imagery showing the Chinese military building these like ship barges. It's like these long ships with bridges attached to them to basically like be able to overcome the defenses on the Taiwanese bridges. And the Taiwanese on their side, they're like really prepping for something. They in Taiwan, they have these annual sort of like internal exercises where soldiers kind of prepare for different scenarios in case of a Chinese invasion. This year was the largest ever. It was like twice as long as the usual exercises. They've had exercises in the metro system. They've never had that before. It seems like they're taking something seriously. It sort of actually reminded me of what's happening in Ukraine prior to the invasion in February of 2022. How you see these satellite images of like some small buildups happening on the border, and the Ukrainians are saying like, yeah, we kind of know something's coming based on our sources. I hope nothing happens, but what's like the experts' take on the Taiwanese situation? Is it looking like there might be an invasion in the next 3 years?
Depends on who you listen to, right? So some will often point to Xi Jinping telling his own military, obviously Chinese leader, telling his own military to be prepared by 2027 for a Taiwanese invasion. So that's coming up. So there are people who take that number. Other ones will be like, there's no way China would disclose their plans for an actual date. So it depends on who you listen to. Some say a couple months, some say it's years away. But the point is, you need a strong enough message of deterrence or you are going to see something happen. Yeah. So it depends on what that message is.
What's interesting is that within the U.S., like, honestly, like, the invading Taiwan now would be probably, like, a decent idea because I feel like the segment of the country who would support the U.S. doing something to defend Taiwan, that segment has gotten smaller and smaller after Ukraine and Israel, Gaza. Like, just so much money has been just poured out, right? So I feel like just politically, it's more difficult. I feel like to like rally the electorate in the U.S. to say like, hey, one of our other allies is in trouble. Like, guys, like we need to pour some more money into this one too. I feel like it's tough, right? Like after the last like 5 years of what's been happening, and even COVID, if you can add COVID to that with the amount of money that was spent there.
2027 would be. The way a lot of other countries look at the United States strategically is election seasons. And so they understand, if you don't like a policy, wait 4 years or wait 8 years, and then it's going to change. But also, if they want to do something, they do it when the country is distracted with an election season. Because one, it can actually interfere with a candidate, but also two, it means that the president or representative is distracted with the campaign, and they have to have a lot of their attention on the campaign trail.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah, that's, I guess, the downside of a representative democracy, right? Where you you can't have that long-term view. It's always like every 2 years you have an election cycle, and you basically have to show results quick. It really makes doing any long-term planning difficult, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Unless you're like in the permanent bureaucracy or something like that, you know what I mean? But maybe they hold it together.
Well, the deep state is the answer. That's what Josh says. Come back after the break, and Josh will give us an update. Yeah, on this I guess urban legend coming true. Organ harvesting from live people in the U.S. Come back, and Josh will elucidate the issue.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the number one supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out. And I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I'm living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses,
The
it's what I
person that
use, and I know
told me
you're
to
going to
kick
benefit
rocks.
in a big way as well.
Love the results or
How
get your
about
money
if
back.
I
This
kick
special
one
TV
up
offer
yours
is
where
not
the sun
available
don't
in
shine?
stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
All right, so when I was 16 years old and I got my driver's permit just to practice driving, I checked off the organ donor box. No brainer, no problem. I want to support the system. When I got my full license, check the box. I renewed my license, check the box. The last time, though, I didn't check the box because someone convinced me. I thought it was an urban legend, but they were very convincing that they will fail to resuscitate you if you have that checked off on your driver's license. I thought it was nonsense, but I erred on the side of caution. But apparently a new report says there might be some truth to that. Josh?
So HHS is currently investigating this, and RFK Jr. actually came out and made some public statements on it. In his own words, he referred to this as, quote, horrifying. And basically what happened was they launched an investigation. They looked at 351 cases. Among those 351 cases, 29%, the individual who would have had their organs harvested, were still showing some sign of life. And in one particular case, the individual, they don't detail it too much, But they say the individual showed signs of life and signs of discomfort. I don't know if so. But the doctor did not go through with the full procedure after realizing something was not quite right with it.
Right, you read the report, it says, potential donor was yelling, please stop, please stop. We didn't know what to do, so we stopped temporarily to reassess. But, okay, so just to confirm, none of the people, like these 29%, who showed signs of life, none of their organs were actually harvested, right? Like,
Well, so this is the nuance with this. In the study, none of them were killed. But the problem they identified was this. The problem they identified was that there were problems they have in the checks on whether or not a person is dead. And so there's a flawed system they're using to actually see if the person is like dead, you know?
Well, I guess the question would be like, yeah, like, because you would still want the organs to be as viable as possible in the event of the person being dead. So I guess they would have to be brain dead.
Well, so that's the issue. A lot of times when they do organ transplants, right? When they get the donor, the individual is not fully dead. Usually they want people who are brain dead, and so they have to have no signs of any cognitive, activity, basically.
And the reason why, on that note, by the way, is because there's an extremely short window of time in between when you can remove someone from life support, right? And then they have to pass away within a typical short specified amount of time before their organs
They
basically
don't
go
know
bad due to
if
lack of oxygen,
they're
right? That is
carrying
about a
weapons
60-minute time frame in most cases. So
to
these
give
tests have to be
to
performed in
Hamas.
that window.
And so this is the concern. So the problems HHS identified was that there was, as you were warned about by your friend, sometimes they may not make the proper attempts to actually revive a person. Oftentimes, 29% apparently, or in that area, they don't do the proper test to actually verify whether the person is actually brain dead. I mean, even then, there are cases where people have been deemed brain dead and made recovery, even though you could say it's a
The
very rare
terrorist.
thing. And so, I think there are really legitimate concerns with this. RFK Jr., they're also talking now about prosecuting a crime, alleged crime, where an individual was apparently killed for this. The case was actually dropped under the previous administration. They're going to revive the case, actually. But RFK Jr. is saying they're actually going to be holding people accountable for this.
So let me ask you. So you said they looked at 351 cases, and 29% of those said that there were signs of life.
Some sign of maybe there was something not quite right.
Okay, so just there was an indication that there might have been something amiss. Were these 300? Like, why were these 351 cases selected? Do you know?
I don't know why they selected those 351. What they did say, though, is that they identified the problems more in like rural hospitals, and most of them involved people who were like drug overdoses. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's financial interest. Maybe there's corruption. Maybe you're dealing with a drug overdose that looks like they're dead, but they're not really dead. So we don't really know the details just yet.
Well, you say financial interest, but I mean, like, if they're going through the official channels in the system, I mean, what would that be, like a backroom deal?
Well, so what RFK Jr. is pointing to is the OPO, which is the Organ Procurement Organization, and he wants to have them further investigated, especially because this, the nature of this whole thing is pretty shocking. The entire industry, or you could call it industry or call it the medical industry, but the industry around organ transplants in the United States, as you mentioned, it's a voluntary thing. The idea is, hey, I'm dead. Why not have my organs save somebody else's life? And for Americans, I mean, I didn't do it because my dad told me not to do it. For the same reason your friend did. My dad said, they might not make the proper efforts to revive you. And maybe that's a bit of distrust. But what's important is this. If trust is broken in the system, a lot more people will start saying that. And so for the sake of maintaining the ability to even have organ imagine someone you love gets heart failure, or they need a liver, kidney transplant or something like that, something to save their lives. And people stop signing up for this because they hear that, hey, they might kill you for it.
But on the flip side, I will say this report actually, like the headlines kind of give you some, like, a real shock, right, when you first read them. But if it's out of 351 cases, like let's say 30, 29, let's say just say 30 for easy numbers, showed signs of life. So that's like, let's just say 110 cases. But you say none of those actually had their organs harvested because like they almost got to that point, but they said, hey, like let's not actually do it. To me, that seems like the system is working.
It is, but the argument you could use is this: is they identified problems in how the assessments were made, and if there's problems in how the assessments are made, it means there's a loophole, and we don't know if some of these people. I mean, you know, the dead don't talk, right? So we don't really know if some of these people could have been saved or not.
The dead don't talk. Don't tell that to the ghosts who live in my attic. All right, moving along to a different Maha update. The only thing I've written here is Mexican Coke.
Mexican. There's a few different varieties of that, but the one we're talking about today is Coca-Cola. Good old Coca-Cola and Pepsi, actually. Anybody who's been to a quality taco stand knows that you can buy good, high-quality Coca-Cola with real sugarcane sugar, which is different from, of course, the one we get here, where they sell us high fructose corn syrup. And you know, interestingly, I've never been a fan of high fructose corn syrup.
I'm not a fan of sugar. Go ahead.
Do you know the history on that? How that actually like made its way into all of our drinks, right?
I know a bit of a detail.
Don't hurt
Okay, so
the
back in the
poor
1970s
agricultural industry.
Look at this
I'm
man
sorry, Chris.
trying to defend his subsidies. Shelby, you go ahead.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. So corn got started being used because of the massive overflow of like federal subsidies to help corn farmers, right? And because of trade barriers, on the other hand, sugar became a lot more expensive, so they went with the cheaper option.
Yeah, so actually, as you mentioned, high fructose corn syrup would not be financially viable were it not for the government subsidies of the corn industry. But because they produce so much of it, you have just an overwhelming amount of it. The issue you have with high fructose corn syrup is that, you know, sugars, okay, normal sugar, it's a balance between like glucose and fructose, right? Your body can't process fructose as well as glucose. Basically, it strains your liver if you consume too much of it.
Allegedly.
No, this is science.
You know, I think he's biased.
This is
You're
science.
Hawaiian, Josh, and cane sugar, a lot of cane sugar farms in Hawaii. Whereas we,
There might be.
Folk from around like forced onto them by the colonial power of the United States.
well, they're
Hey,
getting
Hawaii
a deal
was
now.
literally overthrown by the Dole Banana Company.
Well, okay.
As were a lot of countries, by the way. It's
What's your point? Finish.
But my point is, this is going to hurt Nebraska.
yeah. Look at this man.
No, I agree though. Like, it's true. But at the same time, if they were held up by subsidies, it's like, well, you know, how long can a government subsidy last? Like, you know, what is it going to be, generations?
Well, let's put it this way.
What's next? They're coming for gasoline too.
No, we're letting the gas flow.
Actually, it's the opposite. They increased the ethanol content for gas to 15%.
Well, so here's the argument with high fructose corn syrup versus sugar. If you actually look at it, sugar is not very good for you either. If you consume too much of it, it strains the liver just like high fructose corn syrup would. But high fructose corn syrup is a bit worse. The other argument, though, is because so much of it is like GMO, that brings up the whole argument of GMO. Whereas you can get organic cane sugar pretty easily. What the Coke company is saying, the Coca-Cola company is saying, and also what Pepsi is saying is they're providing the customers with options. And so it is up to the customers that if the market so demands an end of high fructose corn syrup and they want good old cane sugar, well, you know, so speak the American people, and they're going to do it.
I can't wait for the black market to emerge, of like people saying, "I got the old Coke."
Yeah.
Come back after the break, and Chris will tell you why allowing 16-year-olds to vote is not a terrible idea.